Welcome to Opinionated Benchwarmers. This is episode 173. We're getting it going. It's been a minute. We're back. I think we took almost like a month off, but we back. We had a lot of things to take care of. As you see, I have my boy Ramon here, and Rob right now is celebrating his
Yeah,
marriage. We just came from that this weekend, so he's been having a lot going on with that. But feels good to be back. We'll have him back next week. We'll have the full team back. So, how you feeling, Ramon?
man, I'm feeling good. I feel like we almost should have dropped the applause in the background when you mentioned Rob's situation, but definitely congratulations to him. We had a good weekend celebrating with our brother. Definitely hats off to him, man. Of course, we miss him in his absence, but we know he's tending to important things right now. As you said, man, it's been a minute. I was logging in today trying to figure out, do I still know how to do this?
Yeah,
But yeah, we've been missing some time. I'm gonna go ahead and give the listeners a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm still battling kind of with a cough. We had kind of various things like Los was mentioning that kept us from recording for a while. One being me being a little bit sick for a bit of time. But I'm back and I'm feeling like myself again. Just may have a couple of times where I gotta kind of cough. So if I gotta go on mute or something like that, y'all
I
understand what's
got you.
going on, man.
I
I know
got
you're
you.
gonna hold it down for your boy, but as I always say, I'm not gonna hold it any longer, man. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So today we're probably gonna we're definitely gonna touch on some fantasy notes. This is a big draft weekend for a lot of folks. We're gonna give out some predictions. Obviously on our MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and who we think will be in the Super Bowl this year. So we ain't gonna hold y'all too long today, but we're gonna get in there, give you some advice going into the fantasy draft week, where most people are doing their fantasy drafts and getting prepped. So we hope to help you guys out. Hope to give you some nuggets. Hope you can get a steal late in drafts. Hoping that you can make that choice, that right choice in those first 2 to 3 rounds, right? And I was just talking to my wife the other day, this weekend, about this. Drafts aren't won in the first 2, 3 rounds. Drafts are won in those later rounds when you're building that depth out. Injury is going to happen. One thing that we've seen, and you'll be in leagues with people when they'll say this all the time. Man, my team was too injured. I got hurt. Okay, that's football. Players are going to get hurt. What are you doing to prepare for those players getting hurt? So always have that backup plan. Always, whether that's handcuffing, whether that's having a good solid bench built out. Again, that happens in those later rounds and working those waiver wires. So again, that's my initial thoughts on preparing for a draft. I don't know if you had something to add to that, Ramon, at all.
Yeah, no, that's very key in what you said. Like you said, you want to build out that roster depth. But I think that one thing is while you're having your draft, you want to consistently be focused on roster construction.
Right.
Sometimes you can kind of get lost in the flow of the draft and you just thinking pick to pick, but you're not going back and saying, okay, do I have enough, depth at wide receiver? Have I grabbed my tight end yet? What am I looking at running back? And so sometimes people get caught up in name after name, and then they look up and they have 8 receivers on the team. You got 2 running backs, and now you don't have any depth. So one thing you always want to be focused on that roster construction. To me, as you begin to go deeper into the draft, once especially you getting into that fourth, fifth round range and deeper than that. Early off in the draft, I still am, especially first round, is best player available. Like best player available in the first round, and even thinking that way early off in the draft. But as you move through, keep kind of looking back, seeing what have I drafted so far? What do I need? What is going to give me that depth, as Los is mentioning, that can carry me through the season and hopefully at least get you into the playoffs where maybe your starters are back or things of that sort.
No, that's good. And I will also add, you watching your team construction during the draft, watch other teams' constructions. This will also help you. I'll give you the example. Let's say you're in a 12-team league, right? And you have the eighth pick in a snake draft, right? So you go through the first round, right? You get your eighth pick, then you go through the second round, right? And then you go through that third round where you're like the first round, you're towards the back end of the round. Let's say those teams behind you, you have the eighth pick, the ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th pick already have their quarterback, right? You're not forced to get your quarterback if you're in a one quarterback league. At that point, okay, I'm at this eighth pick. Come the fourth round, these teams behind me already have a quarterback. I can be aggressive on another position. I don't have to force a quarterback and just, I've been in leagues where people selected two quarterbacks and got crazy, but you take that gamble and you say, okay, cool. These guys already have their quarterback. Let me wait around to the fourth round to select my guy before all these guys behind me then start maybe taking some of those quarterbacks around. So paying attention, deep attention to what other teams are doing, what they have already, what their runs on. Do you start a run on a position? Those type of things. Do you panic because, oh, all right, I took four straight receivers and the running backs are going drying up, Sometimes there's also strategies too, where there's just not a good running back left. So you take the best available position and hope to work a trade later on because what you have, somebody else don't have. You can work a trade later on to get that position. So those are things to think about while you're drafting, as you're going through the rounds. Don't panic on a position because again, things can change.
Yeah, no, and to that point, as you were mentioning panicking, what I would share as well too is as you're going through the draft, of course, when you know it's getting closer to your pick, have a couple of players in mind because I've
Yeah.
seen situations and I've been in this place before in the past where I think somebody about to fall to me. Like this is the player that I've been waiting on. And right, the pick before, two picks before that person goes, and now I'm scrambling within my minute to pick or
Yeah.
minute and a half. Like in our league, we only get, like a minute to pick. I know some leagues
Yeah.
do a little bit longer. We trust that everybody know what they're doing and they're gonna figure it
Yeah.
out. But saying all that to say is that I done been in that mode before where now I'm scrambling because this is who I was waiting on. Where,
Yeah.
pretty much my draft strategy at this point is once, especially it's getting a little bit closer to me, I got probably about three guys that I may have in mind that, okay, this is definitely the guy that I'm aiming for. And I hope that this
Hmm.
falls to me. But just in case this does not fall to me, this is going to be my pivot and I'm not going to panic. And then what I will say as well, too, is important is depending on your level, how much you've played before, you still do want to make sure you do your necessary research before because what happens depending on the platform that you use is
Yeah.
how rankings are going to be skewed. And so I've seen, and I've been in this place before too, where I've just kind of gone by what the rankings will look like. And then I see somebody take a guy that I had in mind, but I forgot because he wasn't initially on the
At the top.
board at the
Yep.
top. And so
Yep.
still keep your guys in mind, especially if you have some sleepers that you want to take a little bit later in the draft. Maybe write those down, have them to the side so that when you're going through, you're not just looking at what's on that list, but you can remember, okay, I did want to take this guy. I felt he had good upside. I'm gonna go and find him and search for him just in case he's not high in the rankings.
Yeah, no, to add on to that is, even when you get into that maybe after the seventh, eighth round, and where everything is a shot in the dark, right? You have your starters filled out, pretty much everything is a shot in the dark. If you have a hunch on a certain player and you feel good about that player, you have a bit of news that somebody doesn't have, it's okay to go and what they say, reach for a player, right? They're all reaches like, oh, that was kind of high. You'll get
Yeah,
sometimes, oh, that was kind of high for this player. That was high for this player. It's like nothing changed.
yeah,
That all goes out the window when that player is going off week one, two, and three. It's like, oh, was it too high for that player now? Because that player is now, I felt good about him. I saw flashes of this player. I got camp reports of this player.
yeah,
They're not going high anymore, So don't be afraid to go down there and get somebody that's not necessarily at the top because sometimes you can play that game
yeah,
where you like, oh, they far down. I got time. I can get them with my next pick, and you get your feelings hurt trying to play
yeah.
that game.
Right.
So
Yeah, he said, don't be and don't feel any kind of way about what the perception is of everybody else because you can get clowned in the chat. I know Sleeper got the little effects. If you draft somebody that they felt too
yeah,
early, it give you the little sound effect on the back end. It might make you
yeah,
feel played or something, but
yeah,
trust your
yeah,
instinct. It will make you feel played for about a couple 5 seconds or so. I
yeah.
think it gives you the whoa or something
Right,
like
right,
that. Yeah,
right.
so just trust your gut, man. Trust your instincts.
No, I think that's all good, brother, and I think those are all good notes to touch on. One thing I did want to ask you though, when it comes some news that's kind of changed over the last time we recorded. There is, Jayden Daniels. I think it was expected that he would be the starter, but now that it's official, how do you feel about him being your QB1 going into fantasy? Are you okay with him being potentially your QB1? Is he one of those guys that you're reaching on? Or are you, if it's the right situation, my roster filled out, and he's there, I'll take him.
Yeah, he's more one of those guys that for me right now, especially with us talking pretty much redraft, because I know that that's primarily like where our focus is, and
Yeah.
that's what more so of our listeners are doing. So my thought process on Jayden Daniels in Dynasty versus redraft, two completely different things. When we talk about from a redraft standpoint, like you mentioned, I'm more so of okay, if it feels good, if it feels comfortable, I built out my roster a little bit, then I'm willing to take that chance and an opportunity on him. And what I will say, it's not about the talent, it's about the situation currently. And I say it from this regard. One, he has, to me, one wide receiver that I trust over there right now at this point, and that's Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
Besides that, from a wide receiver standpoint, not a ton of weapons. The backfield is respectable with Brian Robinson and with also Austin Eckler coming over there. So some guys that he can maybe dump it off to utilize them potentially in the passing game. I do respect that. Offensive line, causing me a little bit of concern and pause. But what he does have going for him and what you've seen routinely is those legs. You saw Anthony Richardson, a guy come
Hmm.
in, not to be Colts biased here, but I'm just going to call it for what it is. And really within his first 2 weeks, him being, a top five QB within those 2 weeks that he played. And it's because of his legs and his rushing
Right.
upside. So the only thing that scares me a little bit are the weapons, the receiving weapons, and the offensive line to a bit. But my confidence in Jayden Daniels in fantasy is driven by his legs.
Yeah, no, I saw something during the preseason when he was playing during the first quarter where he took off running and took a hit. His quarterback, I mean, I'm sorry, his head coach instantly said he needs to get down. Right. To me, it sounds like the coach is coaching him right because that's my concern when it comes to Jayden Daniels, and I think that was the concern going into the draft with him was he was slender, all these things. He's not going to be able to take those hits that he took in, college football. Will he get down? So I think they're coaching him right. I hope that he gets there and he actually slides. But I do like what he brings from a standpoint of his legs. We've seen him doing the read option, right? And him pulling it and running it in for his first touchdown of the year. We've seen his deep ball accuracy, all the things he showed at LSU. So I think the talent is there. I think he is worth the risk, right? Because of what he, like you mentioned, like Richardson last year, what he brings with his legs. So I'm okay with him being my QB1 and saying, hey, if we burn, whatever, taking that risk. This is all a risk when it comes to fantasy football. So, but yeah, interesting. The next person I wanted to ask you on, and I wanted to see what your thoughts was Keon Keon Coleman, right? He's somewhat of the wide receiver one there, but also another rookie, right? Going to a situation where all those targets with Diggs is no longer there. Do you feel comfortable with him at what? Your wide receiver two, wide receiver three, or four? Where are you at with him in the situation?
Right now, I would have the greatest level of comfort with him in that kind of wide receiver three range, with him having the upside potentially of a wide receiver two. Keon Coleman, I like him as a talent. I don't put him kind of in that elite status as a rookie wide receiver like I would look at, a Marvin Harrison Jr. or even from a talent standpoint, a Malik Neighbors. I would even have a guy like a Brian Thomas over him as well. And so I think that there is, a target availability there. I think you're going to see Josh Allen rely a little bit more on his legs again this year than he's done kind of in years past. But Keon Coleman is a guy I think I would be fine with him being wide receiver three, like flex type of play. Initially, I just have to see kind of a little bit more. You are talking to a guy that he performed well in the college ranks. Obviously, there was a little bit of hesitation based upon how he performed at the combine. Some feeling that maybe his speed doesn't allow him to produce the kind of separation that he needs to. He still is a big target, so he still is someone that maybe in the red zone or things of that sort may have some touchdown ability there. But I wouldn't be definitively comfortable at wide receiver two just yet, but it is in more so of that type of range.
No, that's good. I think I'm in agreement with you on that, his position. And the last question I want to ask you when it comes to draft fantasy was, how do you feel about stacking players, right? Is it, and I would say stack for the listeners that don't know, right? Stacking means, when you grab the quarterback, you grab one of his weapons, right? You grab If you, as we just speaking about Josh Allen, you grabbing Keon Coleman or Khalil Shakir, or one of the tight ends, right? You're stacking them with one of the players, right? When they score a touchdown, you're getting double the points. Is that something that you're actively searching out in drafts? Are you being aggressive with that, or that's something like as I mentioned before, that just kind of falls that way, and you'll take it if it's there?
Yeah, it's more so a take it if it's there for me. I've never planned my draft strategy on the basis of stacking. And I also too, not as much as well. I've done it a little bit more, but I don't focus as much on handcuffs either, which I think that handcuffs, that is a tried and true strategy that I think is good. But as it relates completely to stacking, it's kind of one of those things if it falls to me. Obviously I would love a Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow stack, or something that's elite kind of that caliber and magnitude, but I'm not gonna force it. If for instance, my quarterback, like you just alluded to, is Josh Allen. I'm not gonna force it to get one of his wide receivers right now that I don't totally believe in and skip over a guy that I feel is going to be able to contribute to me more. So, if it's something along those lines that's elite, yes, give me, even right now coming into this year, give me a CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, give me, as was mentioned, the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Give me those kind of situations. Give me the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown. Yes, give me that. But I'm not just actively seeking it. If it falls to me, then I'll go and grab it.
No, that's I think I agree with that as well. I'm not actively seeking it. But if I'm in a scenario where I can't break a tie between two players, two receivers, let's say I'm looking at, I don't know, a good example, Nico Collins versus Rome Aduzier, right? And I already drafted, right? I already drafted CJ Stroud, right? If I already drafted CJ Stroud and I got a tie between Roma Denzier and Nico Collins, I'm going to take Nico Collins, right? Because I want that stack, and that's an offense. Something else that I do going
I
into the
agree.
league or going into the drafts is I look at what I think is going to be top five offenses going into the year. Teams that I think are going to score the most points, right? And I think this helps later in drafts. This helps with stacking. This helps later in drafts when I have those tiebreakers. It's like, okay, I think this team is going to be more successful scoring points. So this is going to break that tie point. These team chances are I'm helping my chances with this person scoring or getting more targets or getting more touchdowns. So those are the little things that I do to try to give myself an edge. I know it's what someone would probably say like, dang, that's a lot of homework looking at top five hours and all that stuff. But it's one of those things that, if you are very competitive and you want to win, you want to consistently win, it's the small things, the small details that's going to get you there.
No, I agree. And to your point, the name of the game is touchdowns in fantasy football. So you want to have teams that's going to have that opportunity to score routinely. So I think that that's a very good point, a very good call out. And I hope that, unfortunately, I was about to say, I hope that when we drafting, that maybe I can, slide or get one of those right before you. But we're not too close, honestly, in our home league that we have. So I don't think that our draft strategy will impact each other too much.
Yeah, I said this on a previous podcast. You got me last year, and I'll never
Yeah.
forget, brother. I'll never
Yeah.
forget that's what changed my whole trajectory of my team when you grabbed Raheem, what's his name?
Mostert, yeah.
Mostert. Yeah, Mostert, right ahead of me after I talked him up all season. And I was like, it was a great late round pick and just boom, led the league in touchdowns. I was like, man, that's one of those times. And the listeners got to give us respect, man. They got to give us views, respect, because we out here giving out nuggets and we compete with each other
Yeah, facts.
every in multiple leagues, right? So we're
Yeah.
giving out nuggets and giving out advantages, and we compete with each other. So I hope y'all using these nuggets to go forward because it's not helping our case
Right.
here.
Not at all. Not at all.
But anyway, I'll transition, man. As we transition out of fantasy football, I wanted to talk about this upcoming season quickly and just kind of get our take on what we think is the MVP, right? Who we think we're going to be an MVP, who we think will be the defensive player of the year, and who's our Super Bowl predictions this year. So, let's start with Super Bowl predictions. Who you got in the Super Bowl?
So I think that one of the teams or one of the names is gonna be kind of boring because we're used to seeing them at this point. But I just think with the great Patrick Mahomes and what he does over there in Kansas City and just that team, that roster, the way they, are trying to also give him some more receiving threats coming into this season. I just can't bet against the Chiefs at this point. And I think that last year we saw the Lions really take a step forward. I think that without kind of, to me, a coaching miscue. Now, I know that that's the way that he's coached throughout the season and he stuck to his guns. But without a couple of those things, I think that they could have very well been in the Super Bowl last season with the way that they were handling that particular game. And so I'm picking the Lions to get over the hump and to get into the Super Bowl based upon the weapons that they have in this point, the things that we've heard even about Jameson Williams taking a step forward. If you have him in addition to what we know is there in Amon-Ra St. Brown, we know that two-headed monster that they have in the backfield with Gibbs and David Montgomery. We know Sam Laporta has elevated himself to being a top five, if not top three tight end already in the league at this particular point. And I just think that, they'll take that next step forward. Jared Goff always gives me a little bit of pause, but I think that there's enough that's around him to be able to get it done.
Yeah, I'm along the lines with you. I'm gonna go with the same boring team with the Chiefs as well. But I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I think the Eagles have gotten better when you look at their offensive weapons, bringing Saquon Barkley in, just trading for Jahan Dotson, who's a great wide receiver three, and that's adding to a Dallas Goedert, that's adding to AJ Brown, that's adding to Devontae Smith, right? When you look at those pieces, right, on offense, an offense that was already playing good, and then the rumors are that him and the offensive court, or I'm sorry, the head coach that put their differences to the side now. So, I could see that team, competing. I could see that team getting back there and getting over the hump and actually winning it this year against the Chiefs, as one of those kind of revenge things. You got us 2 years ago, but now it's our time. You gotta seize the moment now. So I have them winning it all.
Nah, I can see it. I can see it. I definitely think that they take a big step forward, like you said, with the way that they built out those additional weapons. It's gonna be interesting to see, on the other side of the ball defensively what they look like this year. But I mean, offensively, they should be humming. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no excuses at this point. No
Yeah.
excuses.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happened with that tush push. Now that Jason Kelsey is retired, now
Yeah.
that you have Saquon Barkley there, are you just handing that thing off, or are you gonna go back to your bread and butter? So I want to see as the season goes on if they still use that. But
Yeah.
anyway, moving on. Who do you think? Who do you have as your defensive player of the year?
From a defensive player of the year standpoint, I'm gonna go with TJ Watt. Honestly, I feel that last year, and this is not to disparage Myles Garrett at all, but I really feel that honestly last year, when you looked at it from a number standpoint, TJ Watt could have won last year. He had 68 total tackles with 19 sacks, as opposed to, Myles Garrett finishing with the 42 combined tackles and 14 sacks. I think there's a guy that you saw that really his numbers last year kind of paced with his defensive player of the year numbers in 2021 when he finished with 64 total tackles and led the league, of course, in 22 and a half sacks. So he's always going to be a guy that's up there. And I just think that at this point, he's to me the most likely to get it.
Yeah, no, not much more to add to that. I'm in agreement. TJ Watt this year is my pick as well. What
Okay.
about your defensive player of the year?
Uh,
I'm
uh,
sorry, your MVP.
MVP.
Your
Gotcha.
MVP.
Gotcha. I mean, I can tell you TJ Watt again if you want to hear it. No, we go MVP wise. I don't know, man. I'm actually kind of intrigued to maybe hear you first to hear what
I,
who
I'm
your MVP.
when we talked about this beforehand, prep for it, I was stuck between Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. Those two guys, I think. Patrick Mahomes voters may get a little voters fatigue with him, right? That happens, right? But I have to argue the case that he has some of the best weapons that he had, right? In a long time since the Tariq Hill days, right? And early Travis Kelsey days. So I wouldn't be surprised if he won it, but I think Burrow, I think he has something to prove, right? And I think he's beaten Patrick Mahomes before. He's shown that he's had, but he stayed healthy. He's getting his weapons back. He has everything lined up for him to put the team on his back and be that MVP player. So I'm gonna go Burrow. I'm gonna go Burrow.
I like the pick, man. I like the pick, and actually, I think he still at this point has a winning record against Patrick Mahomes. I think still at this point. So I like the pick. I was actually battling. So we had one of the same names in what we were battling in. I was battling between Burrow and the guy that I'm actually going to go with, which is CJ Stroud. And the reason why I'm going with CJ Stroud is I feel that just as you mentioned with Patrick Mahomes, sometimes you get the voter fatigue or Patrick Mahomes' expectations are just so high that if he's not doing something unprecedented, then it's difficult for him to get it at this point. And I think that honestly, I hate to say this, but I think that the Texans are going to take another step forward this year. I hate to say that with them being in my division, with my Colts, honestly, but I like what D'Amico Ryans is doing over there. And I think that with them taking a step forward and with CJ Stroud having the weapons that he has, I mean, that collection, that wide receiver trio, you can put that against any wide receiver trio in the league with Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell. In addition to what they've done in the backfield with Joe Mixon being over there. And then you still, have everything that D'Amico Collins does from a defensive standpoint. That to me is going to propel them to win more games this year. I think CJ Stroud's numbers will elevate and go even higher than they were last year. And so I think that he'll be kind of that new trendy pick that people are looking for. So that'll be the one that I'm picking as MVP.
I like it, brother. I like it. Well, I think we did it again, brother. Episode 173.
Yeah.
I would advise the followers, the listeners to follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube. And you can just search the Opinionated Benchwarmers. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at O_benchwarmers. And we got over 400, not yet, but 4K subscribers on YouTube right now. So doing well. So tap in, get to put a name to the face to the voice, all that good stuff. So it was fun, brother. Until next time.
Later.